Lyra Novik had always known the risks of being a resistance medic. What she hadn't expected was to be caught because of her own compassion. Now, kneeling in the pristine white hall of the Celestial Empire's Justice Chamber, she wondered if saving that wounded Empire soldier had been worth it. The crystalline walls reflected the harsh artificial lighting, making her squint. Her wrists ached from the neural restraints, designed specifically to suppress both movement and the nanite augmentations that made her such an effective healer. Around her stood a circle of Empire guards, their silvery armor catching the light like pieces of captured starlight. Citizen Lyra Novik, the automated voice echoed through the chamber, you stand accused of treason against the Celestial Empire, harboring known resistance members and unauthorized use of restricted medical technology. The sentence is death. Lyra lifted her chin, refusing to show fear. She'd known the Empire's laws about unauthorized healing were strict, but she'd never been able to turn away someone in pain, even if they wore an Empire uniform. That compassion had led to her capture when the very soldier she'd saved reported her. Commander Raylan Voss watched from his position at the head of the chamber, his violet eyes fixed on the human woman before him. Something about her demeanor struck him as unusual. Most prisoners brought before the Justice Chamber broke down, pleaded, or raged. This one simply knelt there, her spine straight, green eyes clear and unclouded by fear. "Prisoner, you may speak in your defense," he found himself saying, breaking protocol. There was no defense against clear evidence, but something compelled him to offer her the chance. Lyra's gaze met his directly. "I won't apologize for saving lives," she said, her voice steady. "Even Empire lives, that's what healers do. If that's a crime worthy of death, then your Empire is built on cruelty, not order." Murmurs rippled through the assembled guards. No one spoke to a commander that way, especially not a prisoner. Raylan felt something stir inside him, not anger at her defiance, but an uncomfortable recognition of truth. He'd served the Empire faithfully for decades, rising through the ranks thanks to his tactical brilliance and unwavering loyalty. But lately, doubts had begun to creep in. The Empire's increasingly harsh measures against its own citizens, the disappearances, the way even minor infractions were met with death sentences, it all felt wrong. Commander, his second-in-command, Lieutenant Darius, stepped forward. "Shall we proceed with the execution?" Raylan studied Lyra's face. There was something in her eyes that spoke of more than mere defiance. It was conviction, the same kind he'd once felt about serving the Empire, before the doubts began. "What made you risk everything to save an Empire soldier?" he asked, ignoring protocol entirely now. "Because suffering is suffering," Lyra replied simply. "Pain doesn't care what uniform you wear or what side you're on, and neither do I when someone needs healing." The words hit Raylan like a physical blow. How long had it been since he'd heard someone speak of compassion without condition? The Empire taught that mercy must be earned, that kindness was weakness. Yet this woman had risked her life to save someone who would ultimately betray her. "Commander," Darius pressed, "the execution order is suspended," Raylan heard himself say. The words seemed to come from somewhere deep inside him, from a place he'd thought long buried under years of Empire conditioning. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Lyra's eyes widened slightly, the first real surprise she'd shown since her capture. "Sir, that's against protocol," Darius protested. "The law is clear." "The law also grants commanders discretionary power in cases where valuable intelligence may be gained," Raylan said smoothly, falling back on his years of tactical training. "This prisoner has extensive knowledge of resistance operations and medical technology. She will be more valuable alive than dead." It was a thin excuse and everyone knew it, but no one dared challenge a commander's direct order, not openly at least. "Take her to the holding cells," Raylan ordered. "I will interrogate her personally." As the guards moved to escort Lyra away, her eyes met his again. This time, he saw something new in them, not gratitude exactly, but understanding. She knew somehow that he'd just taken the first step down a path that would change everything. Later, in the privacy of his quarters, Raylan stared out at the gleaming spires of New Alexandria, the Empire's crown jewel. The city sparkled like a jewel under the light of 3 moons, but for the first time he saw past its beauty to the darkness underneath. His communication panel chimed. "Commander," Darius's voice came through, "Central Command is requesting a report on the prisoner's execution." Raylan's hand hovered over the panel. Once he replied, there would be no going back. Either he would have to carry out the execution or He thought of Lyra's words about compassion, about healing regardless of uniform or allegiance, about the empire he'd served so faithfully and the growing darkness he could no longer ignore. "Tell them the prisoner died resisting transfer," he said finally, "and then meet me in holding cell 7. There's something we need to discuss." As he ended the communication, Raylan knew he'd just signed his own death warrant if he was caught, but for the first time in years he felt truly alive. Sometimes he realized mercy wasn't weakness at all. Sometimes it was the strongest choice you could make. He gathered what supplies he could quickly access without arousing suspicion and headed toward the holding cells. Whatever came next, he knew this night would change not just his life but possibly the future of the Empire itself. And it all began with a simple choice: to listen to conscience over protocol, to choose compassion over cruelty. The revolution would begin not with a bang, but with an act of mercy. The underground tunnels beneath New Alexandria were a maze of corroded pipes and forgotten maintenance corridors, far removed from the gleaming perfection of the city above. Lyra moved silently through the darkness, her medic's training helping her stay sure-footed even in the dim light. Behind her, Raylan's boots made soft clicks against the metal flooring despite his military stealth training. "The resistance hub should be 2 levels down," she whispered, pausing at an intersection. "If they haven't moved it since my capture." "They'd be fools not to have moved it," Raylan replied, his violet eyes scanning the shadows. His commander's uniform was gone, replaced by nondescript civilian clothes that still couldn't quite hide his military bearing. "And the resistance aren't fools. They've evaded the Empire this long." Lyra smiled faintly. "No, we're not fools, just desperate enough to try anything, even trusting a defecting Empire commander." 3 days had passed since their escape from the Justice Chamber. 3 days of hiding in maintenance shafts, surviving on emergency rations, and trying to stay ahead of the Empire's search parties. 3 days of carefully testing the boundaries of their fragile trust. A distant clang echoed through the tunnels. Both froze, pressing against the wall. Moments later, a patrol of cleaning droids whirred past their intersection, their sensors fortunately focused on maintenance rather than security. "This way," Lyra said once the droids had passed. She led them down a narrow passage that seemed to end in a solid wall. Her hands moved quickly over the seemingly smooth surface, finding hidden pressure points. A section of the wall slid aside with a soft hiss. "Impressive," Raylan murmured. "The Empire's sensors should have detected these modifications." "Should have," Lyra agreed, "but we have good tech people, better than the Empire thinks possible for inferior humans." They stepped through into a larger tunnel. The air here felt different, less stale, more lived in. Subtle signs of habitation that most would miss, but that Raylan's training picked up immediately: scuff marks on the floor, the faint smell of cooking, distant echoes of voices. "Stop right there." The voice came from above. Looking up, they saw figures emerging from concealed positions in the ceiling and walls, weapons trained on them. Lyra raised her hand slowly. "I'm Lyra Novik, medic code Sierra 79. I've brought an ally." "We know who you are," a new voice said. A woman stepped forward from the shadows, her dark skin marked with bioluminescent tattoos that pulsed faintly in the dim light. "The question is why you're not dead, and why you've brought an Empire commander to our doorstep." "Zara," Lyra acknowledged. "He helped me escape, he wants to help us." Zara's eyes narrowed. "The last time we trusted an Empire defector, we lost 12 people." "I understand your suspicion," Raylan said carefully, "but I have information you need about Project Eclipse." The name sent a visible ripple through the Resistance fighters. Zara's hand tightened on her weapon. "How do you know that names?" "Because I was part of the planning committee," Raylan said, "and because I've seen what the Empire plans to do to Earth once it's completed." Tension crackled in the air. Lyra found herself holding her breath, acutely aware that their lives hung on the next few moments. "Lower your weapons," Zara commanded finally, "but watch them both. Lyra, you vouch for him." "With my life," Lyra said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. They were led deeper into the Resistance complex, through a series of security checkpoints and scanning fields. Raylan took in everything with careful eyes, but Lyra noticed he was deliberately not memorizing escape routes or defensive positions, a small gesture of trust. The command center was a converted maintenance hub, screens and holographic displays jury-rigged from salvaged tech. A dozen Resistance members worked at various stations, all stopping to stare as they entered. "Talk," Zara said, gesturing to a chair. What's Project Eclipse? Raylan sat, his posture military straight despite his civilian clothes. It's not just a weapon, he began. It's a fundamental rewriting of reality. The Empire has discovered a way to alter the quantum frequency of entire planets. In simple terms, someone asked. They can make Earth disappear, Lyra translated, her medical training helping her grasp the implications. Shifted out of phase with normal spacetime, everyone would survive technically, but they'd be trapped in a pocket universe completely at the Empire's mercy, Raylan finished. It's a way to conquer without destroying, to subjugate without resistance, and Earth is just the testing ground. If it works, they'll use it on every human colony world. Silence fell over the command center. Lyra felt sick. She'd known the Empire was ruthless, but this. Why tell us this? Zara demanded. Why turn against everything you've served? Raylan's eyes met Lyra's for a moment. Because someone reminded me that power without compassion isn't strength, it's just cruelty. And because I've seen enough cruelty. Fine words, Zara said, but we'll need more than words to stop this. I can give you access codes, Raylan said. Security protocols. The location of the main Project Eclipse facility, but we'll have to move fast. Once they realize I've defected, they'll change everything. If we trust you, Zara pointed out. You don't have to trust me, Raylan replied. Just verify what I'm telling you. Send a team to these coordinates. He wrote down a series of numbers. You'll find the proof you need. Zara studied the coordinates, then nodded to one of her officers. Take a recon team, full stealth protocol. She turned back to Raylan and Lyra. Until they return, you're both confined to quarters under guard. As they were led away, Lyra felt Raylan's hand brush against hers, a brief touch, but one that carried volumes of unspoken meaning. Whatever happened next, they were in it together. Their assigned quarters were small but clean, with 2 narrow beds and a basic sanitation unit. The door locked behind them with a decisive click. They'll find the facility, Raylan said quietly, but we haven't told them the worst part yet. Lyra sat on one of the beds, suddenly exhausted, which is. Project Eclipse is already operational. They're starting the sequence in 72 hours. Lyra's head snapped up. 3 days, that's not enough time to stop it through normal means, no, Raylan agreed. But I didn't just bring information to the Resistance. I brought a plan, one that's either brilliant or suicidal. Those seem to be our specialty lately, Lyra said with a faint smile. Outside their room, they could hear the Resistance complex humming with activity. Soon, the recon team would return with proof of Raylan's claims. Soon, they would have to tell everyone the full truth and propose their desperate plan. But for now, in this quiet moment, Lyra found herself studying Raylan's face. The way his violet eyes held both determination and vulnerability, the slight softening of his military bearing when he looked at her. Something was growing between them, something neither had expected but neither could deny. Get some rest, Raylan said softly. Tomorrow we start planning how to save your world. Our world, Lyra corrected him, you're one of us now. His smile was small but genuine. Yes, he said, I suppose I am. In the shadows of the Resistance base, surrounded by people who didn't trust them and facing impossible odds, they had found something unexpected, a sense of belonging. Now they just had to survive long enough to act on it. The stolen Empire shuttle hummed softly as it cut through the darkness of space. In the pilot's seat, Raylan's hands moved with practiced efficiency over the controls, while Lyra monitored the sensor readings beside him. Behind them, 4 Resistance fighters led by Zara maintained a tense silence. Another patrol, Lyra murmured, watching the blips on her screen, coming in from Sector 7. Raylan nodded, making minute adjustments to their course. The Eclipse facility is heavily guarded, but they're watching for large ships, not a single maintenance shuttle. Assuming this isn't a trap, one of the Resistance fighters muttered. Lyra glanced back, catching the flash of hurt in Raylan's eyes before his Empire training smoothed it away. The past 48 hours had been a blur of planning and preparation after the recon team confirmed his intel about Project Eclipse, but trust remained fragile. The massive bulk of a space station appeared ahead, its crystalline architecture reflecting starlight like a massive jewel. But Lyra saw it differently now, knowing what lay within machinery designed to trap Earth in a pocket universe, condemning billions to eternal isolation. Beginning docking sequence, Raylan announced. Remember, we'll only have 20 minutes before the next security sweep. Long enough to plant the charges and get out, Zara said grimly, assuming your codes still work. Raylan's fingers hesitated for a fraction of a second over the controls. They'll work. But Lyra had caught that hesitation. She reached over, letting her hand brush his arm, a small gesture of support that drew a sharp look from Zara. The docking procedure went smoothly, Raylan's codes giving them access to a maintenance bay. As they prepared their equipment, Lyra pulled him aside. "What aren't you telling us?" she asked softly. Raylan met her eyes and she saw the conflict there. "The codes will work," he said, "but there's something else, something I discovered just before I helped you escape, about why the Empire chose Earth for Project Eclipse." Tell me." "Not here," he glanced at the others. "Once we're inside, you'll understand when you see it." They moved through the station's service corridors, avoiding the main passages. Raylan led them with certainty, but Lyra noticed he was taking them on a route different from their planned approach to the main reactor. "This isn't the way to the reactor core," Zara hissed, raising her weapon slightly. "No," Raylan admitted, "but it's the way to the truth, please, 5 minutes." Something in his voice made even Zara hesitate. She nodded curtly, 5 minutes, then we move on the reactor. The corridor led them to a sealed laboratory door. Raylan's codes opened it, revealing a sight that made them all freeze. The laboratory was filled with stasis pods, each containing a sleeping human figure. But what caught Lyra's attention was the medical data scrolling across nearby screens. "No," she breathed, her medical training letting her understand what she was seeing. "There. Collecting genetic markers," Raylan finished. "Specifically, markers for psychic potential. Earth's population has the highest concentration of latent psychic abilities the Empire has ever encountered. Project Eclipse isn't just about subjugation, it's about harvesting those abilities." "For what?" Zara demanded. "To create weapons," Lyra realized, reading more of the data. "Human weapons. They'd use our own people against other worlds." The revelation hung heavy in the air. Lyra felt sick, remembering all the times she'd sensed things she couldn't explain, known things she shouldn't have known. How many others like her were out there, unaware of their potential? "That's why I couldn't let them execute you," Raylan said softly to Lyra. "You're not just a medic. Your healing abilities, they're not just from the nanites. You're one of the strongest psychics they've ever detected." Lyra stared at him, memories flooding back, patients healing faster than they should, knowing exactly where injuries were without scanning. She'd always attributed it to medical intuition. "Why tell us this now?" Zara asked, but her voice had lost some of its suspicion. "Because destroying the reactor won't be enough," Raylan said. "These research files need to reach Earth. People need to know what they have inside them, learn to protect themselves." A distant alarm began to sound. Their 20 minutes were nearly up. "We split up," Zara decided quickly. "Two teams. Plant the charges, download the files, meet back at the shuttle in 15 minutes. She divided them swiftly, herself and two fighters heading for the reactor, while Lyra, Raylan, and the remaining fighter, Talon, would handle the data retrieval. As they worked at the laboratory's main console, Lyra felt something stirring inside her, an awareness she'd always pushed away, now demanding attention. "Raylan," she said suddenly, "there's something else. Something you're still not saying." He didn't look up from the console. "You're getting stronger already, aren't you, now that you know what to look for?" Tell me." His hand stilled. "The Empire. They didn't just find Earth's psychic potential by accident, they were led there. By me. Years ago, before I understood what they'd use it for, I was the one who discovered the first traces of human psychic ability. Everything that's happening, it's my fault." The words hung between them. Lyra felt Talon tense, weapon lifting slightly. "That's why you really defected," she said softly. "Not just because of me, because you've been trying to find a way to stop this." "I couldn't find a way from inside the Empire," Raylan admitted. "But then I met you and I saw another path, a chance to make things right." A deeper alarm suddenly blared through the station. On the screens, security protocols began activating. "They've found the reactor team," Talon reported tensely. "How long for the download?" Lyra asked. 3 more minutes. "Too long," Raylan said. "They'll lock down the shuttle bay before then." Lyra looked at the console, then at her hands. She thought about all those times she'd known things without knowing how she knew them. "Maybe not," she said. She placed her hands on the console, closing her eyes. "Cover me." "What are you doing?" Talon demanded. What I was meant to do, Lyra whispered. And she reached out not with her hands but with that other sense she'd always denied. She felt the flow of data, the patterns of information. Her consciousness expanded, touching the station's systems. Pain lanced through her head, but she pushed through it. The download accelerated, information flooding into their storage device at impossible speeds. Lyra, Raylan's voice seemed to come from far away. Lyra, that's enough. She felt his hands on her shoulders, pulling her back. The connection broke. She stumbled and he caught her. Download complete, Talon reported, sounding shaken. But they're coming, a lot of them. Then we run, Raylan said, supporting Lyra as her vision cleared. Think you can do that? She managed a smile. Watch me. They ran through corridors now filled with flashing alerts, Talon taking point while Raylan helped Lyra maintain her footing. Her head throbbed, but something else was awakening inside her, strength she'd never known she had. The others, she asked as they approached the shuttle bay. Already aboard, Talon reported, checking his communicator. Charges are set, but we've got company. Empire troops poured into the corridor behind them, weapons firing. Lyra felt the danger before she saw it, a shot aimed at Raylan's back. Without thinking, she threw up her hand. The energy bolt stopped in midair. Everyone, including Lyra, stared in shock. Then the bolt reversed course, striking the ceiling and buying them precious seconds to reach the shuttle. They barely made it. As the shuttle detached, they saw more troops flooding the bay, but it was too late to stop them. 5 minutes to minimum safe distance, Zara announced from the pilot's seat. Charges ready to detonate on command. Lyra sat beside Raylan, both of them breathing hard. Their eyes met, and 1,000 unspoken things passed between them. I still don't fully trust you, she said softly, but I understand you and I forgive you. His hand found hers, squeezing gently. That's more than I deserve. 10 seconds to detonation, Zara called. They watched through the view screen as the charges blew, turning the beautiful crystal station into an expanding cloud of debris. Project Eclipse's main facility was destroyed. But as Lyra sat there, holding Raylan's hand and feeling the new power humming through her veins, she knew this was just the beginning. The Empire wouldn't stop, and now they had even more reason to fear what humanity might become. What happens now? Talon asked into the silence. Now, Lyra said, we wake up Earth, all of it. She felt Raylan's grip tighten slightly, offering strength and seeking it in return. Whatever came next, they would face it together, the Empire commander who'd found his conscience and the human healer who'd found her power. Two hearts in the void, defying an empire. The training room in the Resistance's new mountain base hummed with focused energy. Lyra stood in the center, eyes closed, as various objects floated around her in complex patterns. 6 weeks had passed since their escape from the Eclipse facility, and her powers had grown exponentially. Good, Raylan said softly from where he observed. Now try separating the molecular structures like we discussed. A bead of sweat formed on Lyra's forehead as she concentrated. One of the floating metal spheres began to slowly disassemble itself, components splitting apart in midair like a three-dimensional puzzle. The door slid open, breaking her concentration. Everything clattered to the floor as Zara burst in, her face tense. We've got trouble, she announced. The Empire's moving faster than we expected. They're targeting the psychic training centers we established. Over the past weeks, they'd been spreading the truth about human psychic potential, setting up secret facilities to help people understand and control their abilities. The response had been overwhelming, thousands of humans discovering they had powers they'd never suspected. How did they find them? Raylan demanded, already moving to the tactical display. That's the worst part, Zara said grimly. It was Talon. He's been feeding them information since the Eclipse mission. The news hit like a physical blow. Lyra steadied herself against a wall, remembering how Talon had fought beside them, had seemed to accept Raylan despite his initial suspicions. Where is he now? She asked. Gone, disappeared during the night shift, but he left us a message. Zara activated a holographic display. Talon's face appeared harder than they remembered. By now you know what I've done, his recorded image said. But you don't know why. The Empire isn't wrong about everything. These powers, they're too dangerous to be unleashed without control. I've seen the simulations of what untrained psychics could do to a planet. To themselves, the Empire's control is better than chaos. The message continued, but Lyra wasn't listening anymore. She was watching Raylan's face, seeing the conflict there. You've seen these simulations, she said quietly, haven't you? He nodded slowly. They were part of why I supported the Empire's plans initially. The destructive potential of untrained psychic abilities is significant. Is that why you've been helping me train so carefully, breaking everything down into precise steps? Yes, but not to control you, to help you understand your own strength. Zara cleared her throat. This is fascinating, but we have more immediate problems. The Empire's forces are an hour out from the Sydney Training Center, 300 students most barely beginning to understand their abilities. We'll never evacuate them in time, Lyra said, studying the tactical display. Not through conventional means. No, Raylan agreed, but maybe we don't have to, he turned to Lyra. You've been practicing group consciousness linking, haven't you? She stared at him. That's theoretical. I've barely managed to link with one other person, let alone 300. Because you've been trying to control it, but what if you just open the door, let them find their own way through? That's insane, Zara protested. The risk is less than what they'll face if the Empire takes them, Raylan said firmly. Lyra, you can do this. I've seen your strength. Lyra looked between them, feeling the weight of 300 lives in her decision. We'll need a ship big enough for everyone, and I'll need help staying focused. Already on it, Zara said, tapping her communicator. The Starweaver can be here in 20 minutes, big enough for 500. I'll help you focus, Raylan said softly, like we've practiced. The next hour passed in a blur of preparation. They reached the Sydney facility with minutes to spare, finding terrified students and instructors preparing for evacuation. Everyone into the main hall, Lyra ordered, her voice carrying with more than physical sound. Close formation, hold hands if you can. As Empire ships appeared on the horizon, Lyra stood before the gathered crowd. Raylan's hands rested on her shoulders, his presence steady behind her. I know you're scared, she said, but what I'm about to do, it's what we've all been training for. Open your minds, trust yourselves. She closed her eyes and reached out, not with careful precision this time, but with pure intention. She felt Raylan's consciousness supporting hers, helping her stay anchored as she extended her awareness to the crowd. At first there was chaos, 300 minds suddenly connecting, panic and fear threatening to overwhelm her. But then something extraordinary happened. They began to stabilize each other, natural patterns emerging from the chaos. Through their linked minds, Lyra shared her understanding of teleportation, not the complex physics, but the pure feeling of it. Like stepping through a door, but the door was everywhere at once. Empire troops burst into the facility just as Lyra felt the group consciousness reach critical mass. 300 voices became one. 300 bodies shifted reality together. The main hall emptied in a flash of light. They reappeared inside the Starweaver's cargo hold, the massive ship already moving to light speed. 300 people teleported over 10 kilometers instantly. Lyra's knees buckled. Raylan caught her, easing her down gently. Did everyone, she managed to whisper. Everyone made it, he confirmed, his voice filled with awe. You did it, Lyra. But celebration was premature. Alarms blared through the ship. Empire carriers, Zara's voice came over the comm. Dozens of them, they're cutting off our escape routes. Lyra tried to stand, but her body wouldn't respond. The mass teleportation had drained her completely. Get to the bridge, she told Raylan. They'll need your tactical experience. He hesitated. I won't leave you. You're not leaving, you're fighting, go. Their eyes met, and suddenly neither of them could wait any longer. His lips found hers in a desperate kiss that held all the words they hadn't said yet. Come back to me, she whispered as they parted. Always. As he ran for the bridge, Lyra looked around at the 300 saved lives, students already helping each other, stronger ones supporting the overwhelmed, exactly as she'd hoped humanity would react to discovering its potential. But Talon's warning nagged at her. Power without wisdom was dangerous. They needed more than just abilities, they needed understanding. She closed her eyes, reaching out with her remaining strength to touch the group consciousness again. Not to control, but to share. To show them not just power, but purpose. As the Starweaver engaged in a desperate battle for survival, 300 awakened minds began to truly understand what they were fighting for. And in that understanding, they found strength beyond mere power. The chains of ignorance were breaking, but the final battle, the true test of humanity's awakening, still lay ahead. The Earth hung like a blue jewel in the viewport of the Starweaver's medical bay. Lyra stood there, finally strong enough to walk again, watching Empire ships gather in the darkness of space. Behind her, the ship hummed with activity as 300 newly awakened psychics prepared for what could be humanity's last stand. Their numbers have doubled in the last hour, Raylan said, joining her at the viewport. The Empire's throwing everything they have at us. Because they're afraid, Lyra replied, taking his hand. Not just of our powers, but of what we represent, freedom from their control. The past week had been a desperate game of cat and mouse through the solar system, staying one step ahead of the Empire while gathering more allies. Other resistance cells, hidden psychics, even some Empire soldiers who'd learned the truth and defected. Now they had a fleet of their own, smaller than the Empire's, but powered by awakened human minds. Incoming transmission, Zara's voice came over the comm. Empire command ship there, they're asking for you, Raylan, by name. They shared a look of concern before heading to the bridge. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a face that made Raylan stiffen. High Commander Voss, the elderly man said, his violet eyes so similar to Raylan's filled with cold disappointment. My son, I've come to end this foolishness personally. Father, Raylan acknowledged tightly. Lyra squeezed his hand, feeling the turmoil in his mind. You've caused quite a mess, the High Commander continued. But it can still be cleaned up. Surrender the humans to us, return to your position, and I'll ensure your punishment is minimal. You still don't understand, Raylan said. This isn't about me or even about Earth anymore. This is about breaking a cycle of control that's destroyed countless worlds. Control is necessary. You've seen what unrestricted power leads to. Yes, I have, Raylan's voice strengthened. I've seen it lead to healing, to cooperation, to 300 strangers linking minds to save each other. Everything the Empire feared about human potential has proved exactly why that potential should be free. The High Commander's face hardened. Then you leave me no choice, all ships prepare to. The transmission cut off as the first shots were fired. Space lit up with weapon fire as the battle began. All psychics to your assigned positions, Zara ordered over the ship-wide comm. Remember your training, trust each other. Lyra turned to Raylan. Are you ready? He nodded grimly. The bridge is yours, Zara. We'll coordinate from the focal chamber. They ran through corridors now filled with determined faces, humans and aliens working together, united against the Empire's tyranny. The focal chamber was a converted cargo hold where 20 of the strongest psychics had established a group consciousness hub. As they entered, Lyra felt the familiar resonance of linked minds. She and Raylan took their positions in the center of the circle. Everyone linked, she asked, feeling the affirmative response in her mind more than hearing it. Then let's show them what humanity can really do. Through the group consciousness, they connected to other ships in their fleet, creating a vast network of awakened minds. Lyra felt Raylan's tactical genius merging with the raw power of human psychic ability, creating something entirely new. Empire ships fired complex attack patterns, but the Resistance fleet moved as one organism, anticipating every move. Smaller ships slipped through gaps in formation that appeared for split seconds. Telekinetic barriers deflected energy weapons. But the Empire's numbers were telling. Ships began falling on both sides, each loss felt keenly through the group consciousness. We need to end this quickly, Raylan's thought echoed through the link, before we lose too many. Lyra reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining. Then let's end it. Everyone remember what we practiced, the biggest door of all. She felt the others' uncertainty. What they were attempting was far beyond the mass teleportation in Sydney, but they had no choice. Through the link, Lyra shared her memories of that first teleportation, the feeling of stepping through space itself. But this time they weren't moving people, they were moving space. Reality rippled around the Empire fleet. Hundreds of ships suddenly found themselves scattered across the solar system, their careful formation shattered. Now, Raylan commanded through the link. Their fleet surged forward, targeting the isolated Empire command ship before it could recover. On the command ship's bridge, High Commander Voss watched in disbelief as his carefully planned attack fell apart. What are you doing? He demanded over the comm. What have you become? Something new, Raylan replied simply, something free. The command ship's shields buckled under concentrated fire. But rather than destroy it, their ships surrounded it, hundreds of awakened minds focusing together. Through the group consciousness, they broadcast a message, not in words, but in pure thought and emotion. They showed the Empire crews everything, the truth about Project Eclipse, the reality of human potential, and most importantly, the possibility of a different way. Across the Empire fleet, crews began laying down arms. Ships powered down weapons. The High Commander's orders fell on deaf ears as his own people chose freedom over control. In the focal chamber, Lyra felt Raylan's mix of emotions, grief for the relationship with his father that could never be repaired, but hope for the future they were building. "This is just the beginning," she said softly. "There will be more battles. But we'll face them together," he replied, "all of us." Through the viewport, they watched the sun rise over Earth's horizon. A new dawn for humanity, for the Empire, for all those who had lived under control for so long. As the adrenaline of battle faded, Lyra felt the connections between minds shifting, becoming something deeper and more permanent. Not a weapon or a tool, but a bridge between souls who had chosen to be free together. She turned to Raylan, seeing in his eyes the same love and wonder she felt. "So," she said with a smile, "what does a former Empire commander and a rebel healer do after saving the galaxy?" He pulled her close, their foreheads touching. "We heal more, we build more, we love more, we keep choosing freedom every day." Around them, the group consciousness hummed with possibility. The Empire's reign of control was ending, but something far more beautiful was being born, a future where power served compassion, where differences brought strength, and where love could bridge the gaps between stars. It had begun with a simple choice of mercy in a justice chamber. It had grown through trust and sacrifice and courage. And now, in the light of a new dawn, it would change everything. The chains were broken, the void between hearts was filled. And the real story, the story of what humanity could become when truly free, was just beginning.